Today we're taking a look at the story of the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8 and how Jesus deals with her sin issue, but also how he deals with her as a person. And so we turn to John chapter 8, beginning at verse 3. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and live your life of sin." This story of this woman being caught in the act of adultery is one of the best known episodes of the New Testament. Even non-Christians have heard the story. And the setting of this remarkable event begins with the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, who had been trying for a long time to trap Jesus. This man had challenged them time and again, and they were desperate to get rid of him. And here in John 8, they had what they thought was a watertight case, because the penalty for adultery was death by stoning. And if Jesus denied them that opportunity, then he would be guilty of of breaking the law. But interestingly enough, Jesus doesn't contest this. He doesn't contest the law. Now, there's been debate for centuries about exactly what it was that he wrote on the ground, but the words are not important. If they were, the Holy Spirit would have inspired John to tell us what Jesus wrote. So the words themselves are not important. Rather, it is what Jesus did which has eternal significance for us. John begins his gospel with these words: "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." Jesus came into the world to save lost sinners, and he did this by offering his own life as an atoning sacrifice for us. God took the initiative in restoring this broken relationship with him. Jesus himself said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And the words which John uses in this account in John chapter 8 are significant. Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. The ground that God himself created, he walked on. The Apostle Paul describes what Jesus has done like this in Philippians chapter 2. Jesus, who being in very nature God, made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant. Being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. While all this was going on, the Pharisees kept on questioning him. And they conveniently forgot about their own shortcomings and their own sin. They just wanted to get rid of Jesus. This has nothing to do with justice. This was about the Jesus problem. Jesus stooping on the ground symbolized his humanity. It would have been quite easy and probably quite logical for him to stay where he was, stoop down while he answered. But John puts it this way: he straightened up and said, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone." This is an incredible statement. Jesus, the man, stoops to write in the dirt, but being at the same time fully God, he stands up as he speaks to them. He speaks with his divine authority as God. And the wisdom which he displays here is far above our own capability. In fact, what Jesus was saying to his people was, yes, go ahead, stone her. You're quite right. But who are you to condemn? And then Jesus does the most amazing thing. Again, he stoops down and writes in the dirt again. What this means in a figurative sense is that he doesn't remain far off, aloof, accusing and judging just like the Pharisees. But he comes back down to our level. And God has always done this. We don't have to seek after him. He came. He came to seek and save the lost. He meets our need at our point of need. And so, embarrassed and ashamed, all of these other people leave. They shuffle off with their tails between their legs until it's just this woman and Jesus left. Now, sadly, we can all identify with the people in the crowd. We have all condemned others for the specks in their eyes, while conveniently ignoring the planks in our own. And we should also be embarrassed and ashamed for those judgmental attitudes. But we're also like that woman. And it's no coincidence here that straight after this episode, Jesus proclaims himself as the light of the world to the same people that were there. He shines light into our lost world of darkness. That is why he came. He came while it was still dark. Romans 5 verse 8 says, God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Before we even realized that it was dark and gloomy, the light of the world came. The light of the word came. Jesus Christ didn't just come into this world to teach us good morals. He didn't come just to tell us that we should be nice to each other. He came to die. He came to offer us life and salvation. Our sin has separated us from the God who created us. And without Jesus, there is no way back. There is no hope for the lost without Jesus Christ. And his words to this woman, neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. Those words are spoken to each of us too. This story in John chapter 8 is the gospel in a nutshell. We have made a mess of our lives because of our sin. And because of our sin, there is hatred, there is accusations, there's hypocrisy. The list is endless. The side effects of our sin and the ripple effect which it creates all around us. This is a very dark world, and it is getting darker, just like it was 2,000 years ago. But God came near. He doesn't judge and condemn from a distance. It's the Christmas message. He came into our dark and desperate world as a peasant, as a suffering servant. But he brought light, he brought truth, and he brought hope. He came near and he stooped down. But he didn't stay there. And because of the cross, neither do we have to stay in the depths of our despair. Have you ever noticed how little we know about this woman? How old was she? What was her name? What was she like? Was she a gentle and a likable person? Or was she harsh and obnoxious? As she stood in the middle of her accusers, was she sobbing tears of shame, somebody who had been caught in this dreadful sin? Or was she angry? Was she defiantly glaring at these people who dared to drag her to the temple? We know so little about her. The point is this: all we know is that she had been caught in a sin and was publicly paraded through the temple grounds. And what makes this story so remarkable is not the woman, but the way that Jesus responded to her. And it is here where we catch a glimpse of true grace. The central character in this story is not the woman caught in adultery. The central character is Jesus Christ and the way that he treated her. He treated her with dignity. Everyone else had treated her as an object. They were speaking about her in front of everybody else. They were prepared to just use her to get at Jesus. But Jesus saw her as a person, as someone created in the image of God. If you are feeling lost and alone, and if your sin has driven you to the point of utter despair, remember that Jesus will always treat you with dignity. Secondly, Jesus treated her with compassion. The first compassionate act which Jesus did was to write on the ground. Up until then, the scribes and the Pharisees were performing and jumping up and down and pointing at her. proclaiming her sins to Jesus. What he did, though, was to stoop and write on the sand. Suddenly, nobody was looking at her, but they were looking at Jesus instead. And here Jesus gives her the precious gift of compassion. She had been the focus of attention, but now all of a sudden he was. Thirdly, Jesus treated her frankly. Now, some people have said that Jesus was too easy on sin in this case, but that's not true. He confronted her with the root problem of her sin. He said, "Go now and leave your life of sin." She had already been confronted and convicted by her sin. And now Jesus is talking straight with her. Christ followers are to leave sin. We are to move on by following him with our whole hearts. And finally, Jesus treated her with hope. She needed hope for the future. And this phrase, "go now," literally means start over. Because Jesus looks forward, not backwards. He was ready to give her a new life, a new identity, and the power to overcome sin in her life. You see, Jesus is not only interested in what we've done in the past, but what we can become. He loves us too much to leave us living the way that we have been. And the Christian life really is a series of new beginnings. Turn to Christ, leave your life of sin, and follow him, because that is the only way you will make any sense of your life. And he is your only peace. God bless you.